So, today, we're going to dive into one of southern India's most incredible sacred texts, the Periyapuranam. It's this amazing collection of stories about a level of faith so intense, it's almost unbelievable. Let's dig into the cosmic vision and the, well, truly radical devotion at the heart of this epic. And right off the bat, to really get a sense of the scale here, we have to start with the theology. The text talks about this one, single, ultimate reality, Parashiva, who is orchestrating the entire universe. And here's the really important part. None of this is for his own benefit. It's all done out of a deep, profound compassion for every single soul in existence. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start at the highest cosmic level, with the 5 divine acts that literally shape reality. Then we'll zoom in on the soul's journey, meet the saints who actually lived these ideals, look at a really shocking story about justice, and finally, we'll see why this text is so important. First up, the 5 acts of Shiva. See, to really understand the human stories in this epic, we first have to get a handle on the divine stage they're playing out on. We need to understand the theology of how this universe is supposed to work. So, at the heart of all this is a concept called Panchakrityam. It's this idea that God is constantly performing 5 key acts that govern everything. And I'm going to say it again because it's so crucial. The motivation behind it all is immense compassion. This lays out the whole cosmic cycle, right? It kicks off with creation, which gives souls a world to live in and experience things. Then comes preservation, which keeps that world running. Now, destruction might sound bad, but it's not. It's seen as a compassionate act, a way to give souls a rest. Number 4 is concealment. This is like a veil of illusion that allows us to learn and grow on our own. And finally, there's grace, which is when the veil is lifted for those souls who are ready to see the ultimate truth. So, okay, that's the big picture, the cosmic plan. But how does that apply to an individual? This theology also gives us a really detailed map for the soul's journey toward liberation. You can think of it as a kind of spiritual evolution. A soul might start out on what are called outer paths, exploring different beliefs. From there, it might move to the Vedic path, following more general scriptural rules. But this text says the most direct route, the fast track, is the specialized Shaiva path, and that's the one that leads to the ultimate goal, Sayujya, or complete, total union with the divine. So what makes this path so specialized? Well, the text makes this really interesting distinction between the Vedas and the Agamas. Think of it like this. The Vedas are the general truth. They're like a foundational education for everyone on how to live a good life. But the Agamas, they're the specialized truth. They're the advanced curriculum, the specific instructions for those on this direct path to liberation. Okay, so we've covered the grand cosmic plan, but the real magic of the Periyapuranam isn't just in the abstract philosophy. It's about the people who took these ideas and lived them out in the most extreme ways you can imagine. It's time to meet the saints. The entire epic is built around the lives of 63 absolutely incredible individuals. They're known as the Nayanmars, and their stories are the beating heart of this whole work. And what's so amazing is that these weren't just monks or priests living in isolation. No way. They came from every walk of life. You had kings and warriors, sure, but you also had merchants, potters, laborers, even people considered outcasts. Their lives are basically presented as real-world case studies of what this path looks like in action. It shows that this kind of absolute devotion is possible for anyone, no matter who you are. Now, to really understand what we mean by radical devotion, we have to look at one of the most famous and, frankly, shocking stories. It shows how that cosmic principle of compassion can play out in a stunningly human way. It's the story of a king, a calf, and a definition of justice that, well, you just have to hear. So, here's how it starts. A tragic accident. The king's own son, the prince, is driving his chariot, and he accidentally runs over and kills a little calf. Now, this kingdom had this really unique system. There was a huge bell of justice hanging in front of the palace, and literally anyone or anything that felt wronged could ring it to get the king's attention. So the mother cow, in her grief, walks up to the palace and rings the bell. The king comes out, investigates, and confirms what happened. Then he delivers his verdict, and it is just mind-blowing. He orders that his own son, the prince, be taken to that exact same spot and be crushed to death under the wheels of the exact same chariot. So you're probably thinking, why? That's monstrous. But from the text's point of view, it's the ultimate act of justice. It all comes down to this principle. The highest form of knowledge is to feel another being's suffering as if it's your own. For the king, the grief of that mother cow was just as valid as the life of his son. The life of a calf was equal to the life of a prince. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about an empathy so absolute, so radical, that it demanded perfect balance. And it's stories just like that, stories that are designed to completely shake you up and challenge everything you think you know, that explain why this text is so revered in its tradition. Let's wrap up by looking at the Great Puranam's overall significance. So, just a few key facts here. The text was written by a 12th century poet named Sekajar, and the tradition says he didn't just come up with it on his own. It's believed that Shiva himself gave him the very first word to start with, Ula Kalam, which means all the world. And the entire purpose of the epic is to take all that high-level philosophy we talked about and make it real, make it tangible, through the lives of these 63 saints. And that really gets to the heart of its name. It's called the Periyapuranam, or the Great Purana, not because it's long, but because of what it's supposed to do to you. The stories are said to have this incredible power to just melt a person's heart, like wax that gets too close to a flame, opening them up to this intense feeling of devotion. Which leaves us with a pretty huge question, one that echoes way beyond just this one ancient text, right? The stories in the Periyapuranam, with these extreme acts of justice and devotion, they really force us to ask ourselves, what does it truly mean when faith, in its purest, most absolute form, demands that we do the seemingly impossible?